everyone. So, welcome to the Here's Hope Project, where your story creates hope. And I'm Sarah Jane, your host, and today I am bringing on Tiffany, who is the founder of the Princess Nora's Warriors Foundation, and she also hosts her own podcast called The Unexpected Fight. Now, Tiffany had a daughter named Nora, who unfortunately died of brain and spinal cord cancer in 2021. She had a brother named Zane, who was 5 years old at the time of her passing, and he's 7 years old now. So we are going to talk today about, what grief looks like for a child that age and sort of how to support them through the grieving process. So yeah, that's what we are getting into today. All right, so now I would like to introduce you all to Tiffany.
'Cause it's here where we lay in my blanket of despair, where I'm weak but I'm strong and black smoke fills the air, where I'm burned and broken.
Hi, Tiffany. It's good to meet you face to face.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah, I hear today's a big day. I saw your post a little bit ago about it's Zane's last day of school.
Yes, he's so excited.
Yeah, that is
He's
exciting.
ready for the summer, but he's not ready to go to second grade. He said he wants to go back to first grade. So
Oh, really?
it's obstacle to go over there, but
Well, I'm sure he'll have a lot of fun in the summer, and then, yeah, he definitely won't want to go back after that.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you and I, we don't actually know each other we haven't known each other for that long, maybe about 2 months.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you were looking for someone to create a music video for you to spread awareness for childhood cancer.
Yes,
And you chose me, so
I did.
thank you. Music videos are my absolute favorite thing to do. It's actually how the Here's Hope project started to start with. And yeah, it was just an honor to be able to create something for you and your daughter, Nora. Nora, she was diagnosed with brain and spinal cord tumor in cancer in 2021.
Yes.
And this was during COVID times, unfortunately. And so she had caught COVID and they had to stop treatment. But unfortunately, because of the aggressiveness of her type of cancer, she died, unfortunately. And that is just extremely devastating. And I know that there's nothing I or anyone can say that could ever fill that gap or hole. But what I will say is that I think you are doing an incredible job at keeping her memory alive and spreading awareness and advocating for other cancer families. And you do this through a nonprofit that you started called the Princess Nora's Warriors Foundation. I have to say that slow because sometimes it's like a tongue twister and it doesn't come out of my mouth right.
Yeah, everybody kind of gets hung up on it.
But yes, it's the Princess Nora's Warriors Foundation. And through this, you funded $75,000 in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
You do a yearly scholarship for those intending to be nurses. And you give direct family assistance to other cancer warriors and families out there, which is incredible. It really is. You do a lot for a lot of people. You're incredible. So thank you for coming on today. I'm really excited to talk to you today because we're talking about sibling loss and grief.
Yes.
And, when it comes to just child loss and grief in general, it's really not it's an uncomfortable subject. It's not something we really want to talk about or like to talk about. But I think with anything that is uncomfortable, these are the things that are most important to talk about.
Absolutely. I agree with you 1,000%. I feel like in our society, we don't want to talk about grief or things that people go through. And sibling grief is very real and talked about very little because they don't want to address the elephant in the room.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And so I guess Nora, she has an older brother named Zane. He was 5 years old when Nora passed, and he's 7 right now. Can you go into maybe what their relationship was like when she was alive?
So Zane and Nora had a very special relationship. Zane was almost 4 when Nora was born, so he was quite a bit older than her. He loved her from afar, is what I like to describe their relationship as. Zane has ADHD, and he's very hyperactive, and he was always on the move. And so He would come pat her on the head, or he might hold her for 30 seconds and then he was off to the next thing. But he'd come and give her a quick hug or a kiss. One of my favorite stories about them, Nora was probably 7 months old or so, and before she got sick, and we were playing in Zane's room with his toys, and he obviously didn't like her touching his things. And so we were just playing. He walks over to her and grabs her hand, and he's like walking with her. I'm like, oh, this is the cutest thing I've ever seen. You know, he's playing with her, and they walk into the bathroom, and I'm confused as to why they're going in the bathroom. And then he like drops his hands and he says, here you go, baby Nora, you can play in here. Slam. And then slam the door behind him. And so that was his way of saying, stop playing with his things.
Yeah. Well, that's cute. That's funny.
But, you know, then we had to talk about, like, buddy, we can't leave Nora in the bathroom by herself. Just the baby, doesn't know, and all these things. But yeah, so I say he loved her from afar just because he was always so active. But she loved to watch him. She was very intrigued by his busyness, and she liked to sit by him when he was doing activities, and she put her hand on his leg just to be by him. And it was very cute and endearing, and they were super sweet together.
That's cute. She clearly she looked up to him. That is cute. He wasn't really into sharing at that point. But yeah, I like that story of her being in the bathroom and just, okay, you have fun locking him out, locking her out. So when Nora actually ended up dying, how did you where were you, and how did you explain her death to him?
That's so difficult. So we were actually in the hospital. She was in ICU. She had went in for an MRI and essentially passed away while she was under, but she was on a ventilator. But whenever they took her, they couldn't get her off the ventilator because she was brain dead as she came out of the MRI. And so child life specialist at Arkansas Children's Hospital helped us to be able to explain to him kind of what was going on. They showed him everything. He wasn't there when she actually passed. When we took her off the ventilator, we didn't feel like that was something that a 5-year-old needed to see. We just told him that she was going to heaven, and he just accepted that. The child life specialist kind of explained that to a 5-year-old. Things are black and white. There's not really any gray or like what happens. He didn't ask any of those questions. We had actually lost both of my maternal grandparents within 9 months of Nora passing. So he had been to a couple of funerals before then. So I think he had a little bit better of idea of kind of what was going on. But we did have Nora cremated, which was different than my grandparents, who were both buried. And he watched their caskets be lowered into the ground. And so he had questions about, why doesn't Nora have a casket? But again, he was kind of too young to explain cremation to. So we just said, you know, God came and took her to heaven, and, you know, she lives in heaven now. And so we didn't really explain to him what happened to her physical body. And he hasn't asked that yet, thankfully. So we just kind of will answer that. We've always been very honest and truthful with him. As time has gone on, when he asks questions, we always try to tell him the truth the best we can. So that's kind of one of the things that we've done with him, is just be honest with him and tell him what's going on. And
was he confused at all? Did he express any confusion, or what kind of behavior changes did you notice?
So a lot of kids probably get more angry and upset. He wanted everybody to be happy. And so he just tried to make everybody smile. He wanted to make everybody laugh. He didn't want people to be sad, and he didn't understand the sadness aspect. And so he did everything in his power to make people happy. We took him to grief counseling right away. I was in grief counseling as well, pretty much just a month or so after she passed. And as he went on through grief counseling over a few months, they actually told us that they didn't recommend that he continue because they were having to force him to talk about it. And they feel like children grieve differently than adults. They don't have the coping skills. Like I said, they see things in black and white. And so to him, there wasn't anything to be discussed feeling wise. As, you know, she was here and now she's not.
Yeah.
was the way that he saw things. And they explained over time he may grieve in different ways throughout his life, and it may present itself when he's in high school or as an adult, or any random time throughout his life he may have to go deal with it then.
Yeah. I have things to say about that, but I actually want to, because we were talking about her funeral and stuff like this, and I'm very curious. How did you prepare him for her funeral? And you were saying he really likes everyone happy. I'm sure that was a very hard day for everyone else. And so, how did you prepare him for all of that?
He actually didn't go in the sanctuary, so we had her funeral at our church, and we had him go see her before the service, but he saw her for maybe 3 seconds, and he just didn't want anything to do with it. And we didn't make him. We didn't make him stay in there. We didn't urge him to. We let him grieve in the way that he needed to, and his way was to stay away.
How did family and friends kind of go about trying to comfort Zane and help him through this?
I think everybody was just on his side, so to speak. So brought him presents, wanted to take him to do things, keep his mind busy. We actually, the day after her funeral, we took him to Disney World as a family, and we spent the next week in Disney. Just because I didn't want to be at home, our family, we just needed some time. And, we were also in shock. I think we had a good time with Zane, and he had a good time. And I think it was a lot of just numbness at that point, though, which I probably felt for a year or more before I really started the grieving process.
Yeah. One of the things that I found really interesting is, well, first off, you have a podcast too. It's called The Unexpected Fight, a pediatric cancer podcast. And last year I listened to an episode I listened to this a few weeks ago, but the episode was last year. And you had brought on someone named Victoria Porter, who is a grief counselor.
Yes.
She had some really interesting things to say. The most interesting thing, I think, was that when you're dealing with a sibling who lost their brother or sister, that it's recommended not to say something like they're in a better place, because like you were saying, kids do have a very black and white kind of view on things, and that they may, not interpret that as, how we are intending that is, we're saying this to comfort you and because we love you. But a child may think like, well, if they're in a better place, I want to be there too. And, maybe I want to die. And so I heard that from her. I'm like, that's scary. So what else should we say or not say?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you really just have to read the child. I have known other siblings who have lost their sibling, and they love talking about their sibling. Zane does not love talking about Nora. I think it brings up a lot of grief feelings for him that he is not old enough to know how to deal with. And with that, he doesn't love talking about her. And so we don't force her on him. Of course, we have photos and things around the house, but I normally don't say, hey, do you miss baby Nora? Or, anything like that. We wait on him to say something to us about her. And he does from time to time. He'll say, I miss my sister, or what do you think Nora's doing in heaven? Things like that. Or he'll see one of her things and say, oh, Nora would like that sloth.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be hard on a kid, especially at like 5 years old, not knowing how to, even really knowing what your emotions are or why you're feeling them or what they mean. So it completely makes sense that he would try to avoid it. And yeah, and he's still, because you said you sent him to a grief counselor therapy right away. But they discovered quickly that he didn't really want to talk about it. So did they do like play therapy, and how did they support him through this grieving process?
So they did play therapy mostly. They would play with sand or Legos or read books, and they would talk about different things. And then the counselor would try to lead into talking about Nora, and she said really it was like pulling teeth to get him to talk about her. And I think that's because he doesn't want to be sad and he doesn't like those grieving feelings, so he just chooses to avoid them, which is normal in a 5-year-old. So we took him out, and we haven't attempted grief counseling again thus far. We haven't seen any behavior changes or backlash.
Not much has changed over the 2 years with him wanting to talk about her. It's pretty much been the same.
And we just try to create open communication with him and let him know that when and if he wants to talk about her, we can always do that, and that is okay. And if he doesn't want to talk about her, we won't. And so we just really leave that ball in his court to make sure that he's comfortable with what he wants to discuss. And we always want him to know that we as his parents are there, but we've also discussed, if you don't want to talk to mom or dad, you can talk to somebody else if that would make you more comfortable, if you want to talk about your feelings. And he hasn't expressed any want to do that thus far, but who knows, he may in the future. And we all, from time to time, just say, hey, buddy, if you ever want to talk about your feelings, you can talk to mom or dad, or you can talk to your grandparents, or you can talk to a counselor if you don't want to talk to any of us. And he says, okay. And he says, I don't want to talk about it.
Were you concerned at all about that, about him just wanting to avoid it all?
I was in the beginning. I did some more research about age-appropriate behavior and grief process at that age, and it seems age-appropriate for his age, early school age. So we've just let him go through his own process for now until he shows some signs or symptoms or need for further intervention. We'll just keep an eye on things and see how it goes.
So at that age, is there any triggers that triggers memories, or not really?
Not well, obviously we have stuff around our home, but I think he's so used to those things, they don't really create any triggers for him. We've just had pictures of her up from before she was sick, and we've left those things there. We've left her room the way it was, and he comes in her, obviously that's where my office is in Nora's room. So he comes in here, and he doesn't really seem to be bothered by coming in here or seeing her things around the house. I think things that trigger him the most is seeing other families with kids his age that have younger siblings. I think triggers him more than anything. We were actually at the park last year, and there was a little boy playing, and his mom had a baby in a stroller, and he just walks over to her and goes, oh, that's a cute baby. I had a sister, but she died. And the mom was mortified, oh my God.
Didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, she just looked up at me, and I was like, I'm so sorry. She was like, no, I'm sorry. It was a odd moment, but
he just said it matter-of-factly, it sounds like.
He could I could see his grief comes out whenever he sees that scenario that we once had that we no longer have. I think triggers him probably more than anything.
Yeah, so last year I actually did an episode with congenital heart defects, a mom. She lost her son, and we were talking about grief. She also has kids. And, when their child dies, your immediate thoughts kind of go to the siblings and how they're coping and being there for them. And I guess I'm assuming you went to sort of survival mode, or we're just thinking of, how's Zane going to deal with this? And so with that, how do you kind of balance between taking care and being attentive to his needs and, going through your own grief process?
I was very intentional at the beginning of our grief process to see a grief counselor, and I still continue to see her now, almost 2.5 years later. There's always going to be grief work to be done. While I may not always need a grief counselor, I will use her processes that she's walked me through throughout our time together to be able to navigate feelings when they come up. Or with Zane, I try to let him know whenever I'm upset, because I think that's important for him to see too, that you can be upset and that's okay. And my husband, obviously men are a lot more stoic and don't show emotions as much. And, I've encouraged my husband to share his emotions with Zane as well, even though we both hesitate on doing that because we don't want to create a mood of sadness around. But at the same time, it is important to share with our kids that it's okay to have feelings and it's okay to be sad, and we'll get through it together.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very important. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that, because that was actually one of my questions. Like, did you try to hide your grief at all? But you were very open about it. And yeah, I think especially with someone like Zane, who didn't really want to talk about it, but to see you, we don't want him to know that you're upset, but to see that, to say, like, even if he is feeling this inside, it is okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to miss her. It's actually very healthy. Did you notice, like, after Nora died, did your relationship with Zane change at all? Like, were you more protective, I would think, maybe? Or
No, I don't think so. Zane was my firstborn, so I've always been very protective of him, and he's always been a mama's boy. So I think that our relationship's always just been extremely strong. And after Nora died, it didn't necessarily change, but I do feel like he became more protective of me and more protective of my husband. Whenever my husband and I go out of town together, if we just have a day or two, we need to go somewhere, Zane has severe anxiety. Even though he doesn't verbalize that, he stayed with my mom, and every time we leave, he throws up at night. And he doesn't know why, but I know why. It's because me and my husband leave together, because if we leave separately, it doesn't happen. But every time that we've left together, Zane gets sick at night.
has he always had anxiety?
Mm-mm.
Was this just since something that developed after Nora?
Yeah, I think that us being apart so much when she was in the hospital and us taking turns with him, and then he thinks that Jeremy and I are going to die if we're somewhere together, and I think he feels like he's going to be left alone.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
That
I
makes
think that's probably the most tough thing on him, and I don't know why Nora's death had so much effect on mine and my husband's life. I guess it just showed that sometimes people die and we don't know why, or bad things do happen. In his young life, he's realized that things can happen while somebody's gone, and then maybe it's because we didn't let him see her pass off the ventilator. I don't know, because we made him leave. My aunt took him home, and maybe that was a mistake on our part, but we'll never know. We don't get a chance to do it again. But
yeah, I would think that would be, I don't know, I think that would be pretty traumatic to see your sister like that on a ventilator and stuff.
That's what we thought too, and we didn't think that would be healthy for him. His birthday party was also the next day.
Oh, that's right. You had said that.
She passed on at like 12:40 in the morning, Saturday. So on the 19th at 12:40 in the morning, and his birthday party was 11 a.m. the next day, and we were at the hospital till almost 3 a.m.
Oh my gosh. And you still did the birthday party?
Yeah, I just felt like as a mom, he was still here. Like, while my heart was still broken, I didn't need to make him miss out on things that are important to him because I'm sad. And so we got up and we had his birthday party, and it was terribly hard. Terrible.
Oh, yeah. I imagine. But I imagine you did that probably because you just want to maintain a sense of normality for him, or normalcy.
And we tried to do that all the way through her diagnosis. My husband or I were always with him. One of us was with Nora, and one of us were with Zane. And so we would just take turns back and forth switching so that he could maintain his life at home, at school, and keep his activities and things like that, because it's not fair to the siblings who have to go through any kind of chronic illness with a sick sibling. It's really hard.
I know that he has counseling, and is there any other like camps or program or anything that he can be with other kids who have also lost?
We haven't yet. We've definitely thought about it. I'm still in this phase of not knowing if he's ready for me to push something like that on him because he doesn't talk about it a whole lot. So I feel like I'll know when he's ready, and maybe in the next year or so, hopefully he'll be able to understand his feelings and verbalize his wants and needs a little bit more in relation to grief.
Yeah. You were just talking about a minute ago or so about his anxiety when you guys leave. How do you help him through that, or what do you say to try to get, I don't know, help him be less anxious?
We just tell him we're going to be okay. We're going to see you when we get home. And I mean, we've really only left him for 2 days max, and it's only been 2 or 3 times since Nora died. So it's not been all that much, but he seems to not do very well with that. So now we just don't.
That's
probably the last time we went anywhere together without Zane.
I'm sorry. I was talking over you for a second. I didn't mean, what did I miss? What did you say?
Last August was the last time Jeremy and I went anywhere overnight without Zane.
Okay. So he was only struggling really if you guys left for a night or a few days. He didn't have trouble like going to school and leaving you, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's only if Jeremy and I leave together and go out of town.
And then you were saying too that it's been 2 years, there hasn't been any change in his behavior or anything like that over time.
No, he's really done well. And maybe it's because he is avoiding it altogether for now.
But that's part of the grief process.
Yeah.
So it's a lifelong journey. So is there anything that you would like to say to parents or those listening who maybe this just happened to, on how they can support their child or anything like that?
Try grief counseling for sure. Some children may be a lot more receptive than Zane was. Also, just listen and be attentive to their needs and try to listen to what they're telling you. Zane would tell us that he, in his own way, that he didn't want to talk about it. And we needed to listen to that and needed to be okay with it, because as an adult, we know the things that we should do and how to process and how to cope with grief. But a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old is not going to understand or know what those coping skills are. And just providing those for your child and having an open communication with them to let them know that you're a safe space. And if you're not a safe space for them, allow them somebody else to be a safe space with them, because they may not feel comfortable talking to you as their parent. Maybe they want to talk to somebody that's not in their family about their feelings because they don't want to make you upset.
Did you find like a support group or anything like that for parents that have other children? Like, did you
have a support group? But I'm part of several online. While We're Waiting is a wonderful support group for parents who have lost children. I haven't really delved into sibling support groups yet, just because we're trying not to force that just yet. But there are several. I know they have a couple of camps here in Arkansas in the summertime for siblings. They also have several family retreats, Lighthouse Family Retreat. I'm trying to think. Maybe I can get you a list and send you some information to put in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So we need to wrap up for now, because I like to try to keep these to about 30 minutes. But I do want to give you a few minutes, or some time just to plug your own podcast that you have, and also if you have anything else to say about the Princess Nora's Warriors Foundation that you run.
Oh, so my podcast is called An Unexpected Fight. Like you said earlier, we discuss all things pediatric cancer, from testimonials from patients and family to we talk with doctors and about new research going on. I'm actually now a division of the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation. So we still do the same things, but we provide cutting edge research, and we're able to fund clinical trials starting at phase 0, which is super important because that's where funding is most lacking, is in early stage clinical trials for these kids. It's a wonderful organization. I'm really, really blessed to be a part of it. And I hope that you can listen to the podcast. And if you want to know any more about our story, Nora's, Noras, warriors.com is our website, and it has our full story and all about our foundation.
Okay, so it's noraswarriors.com, not Princess Nora. Okay.
The website's just Nora's Warriors.
Okay. And then where can they find your podcast? What platforms are you on?
Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, it's out there.
Okay, great. And it's The Unexpected Fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again for coming on and just talking with me. I learned a lot today about this subject. It's kind of had my curiosity for a while. So thank you for sharing all of this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And you're doing great things with the Here's Hope project.
Broken, battered,